Hey there everyone, welcome to this second video here in January. I wanted to do a sound design, maybe a bit of an advanced sound design thing with y'all today. I wanted to build something that sort of sounds like something being run backwards through a tape loop. I'm sure y'all have heard these Instagram or YouTube videos of people who will play a bunch of piano, really pretty piano stuff, and then they'll run it backwards into a tape player or run the tape backwards. And you get this kind of cool effect where you have all these chords and notes that are all kind of hitting you and reverse sounding back to you at different times. And that is doable on a lot of synths. Now, again, this may not be available on your synth. There are some kind of requirements to this patch. But the cool thing is once you get it down, you can apply it to a number of different sounds. It won't have to sound just like I make it. So you can take this technique and try it on other sounds. But essentially the prerequisites for this are you want to have an LFO that has a waveform that you can, there's waveforms for LFOs. Normally there's sine or triangle, there's a square wave. You either want to have a sawtooth wave going up, or if you have sawtooth going down, you want to be able to have negative amounts on your LFOs, which I know not every board has that, but you should be able to do this on the Korg Minilogue XD, the Hydrasynth, the Rev 2, the Prophet X. The Super 6 does a version of this, I believe. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I think on the Super 6, I may have achieved this thing actually with envelopes, because the envelopes loop on that particular board. You can do it with looping envelopes too. I think this method's quite a bit faster. So anyway, and then obviously you need a polyphonic board. You could make this sound on a monophonic board like a Moog Sub 37 or something, but it's not going to be as cool because you're not going to have multiple notes hitting you at different times. So I'm going to build sort of probably just a cool little sawtooth sound, or sorry, a cool little sine wave sound. I'm not going to make it really strange, I don't think. Because the effect is already kind of weird. So right now, this is just an initialized patch. I'm starting from scratch. So that's all we have right now. I'm gonna find sine wave. And this won't matter later on because we're actually this is gonna be an intended effect later on in the sound. But just a side note, when y'all are building, especially sine waves, but on a lot of waveforms, you're gonna hear this this pop at the beginning and the end of the sound. Right? You kind of hear that, and that thing, it's pretty subtle, but recording with it is kind of a nightmare sometimes. So sometimes what I go in and do is I literally go into my amp, my volume envelope, or if your filter envelope is doing something, you'll want to check this too, but right now it's not doing anything. And I'm going to change my attack from 0 to 2 and my release 0 to 10. And you can use your ear. The amounts will be different on every board, but you'll notice just by changing it there, there's 4 and 10, and the end amount is 36 seconds, and I'm at 4 milliseconds. So I'm barely moving it above 0, and that pop is gone. So just a note to make your recording lives a little better. But anyway, what I'm going to do with this particular program is I want to have an LFO basically raise the cutoff of my sound. And what I want to have happen is I want it to be happening at different speeds depending on where my keys are on the keyboard. And it sounds cool without that last thing I said. So let's set that up just so you can hear that effect. But the differing speeds thing really gives it a vibe too. So I'm going to go to my LFO and I'm going to have the sawtooth up. Sorry, got lost for a second. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign that LFO. On here it's a pre-assigned thing, but your source on any other board, your source would be an LFO, and then your destination is going to be cut off. And I'm going to set that, let's just set it the max on here is 64 for this. I'm going to set it there. And then I'm going to make sure my cutoff is down because, again, if we're moving up in cutoff and our cutoff is already to the highest, you're not going to hear anything. So I'm moving my cutoff down. So now you can kind of hear, like, even if I just play a chord, let me move cutoff even lower. You get this kind of cool, like it's fading in a little bit of a vibe. I'm gonna maybe turn the amount down. And I'm gonna turn the speed of the LFO down as well. Again, I'm using my ear to find these numbers, like this is 0.50 hertz per second, but just find something that sounds good to you. It's not really important what the exact chord is. Okay, so we have this cool kind of like backwards effect, and I can kind of like cheat a little bit. And if I, there's things called like polyphonic triggers on LFOs or monophonic triggers on LFOs. Essentially what that means is like the LFO on some boards you can change, a lot of boards you can do this actually. You can have it like re-trigger every time you play a key, which essentially what it does is it syncs all the keys together. Whereas this one, like if I play a glissando chord, you can actually hear the envelope like hitting all. You hear how it's hitting each note differently. And I can change this to be single if I want. And what happens then, even if I roll the chord, it's doing everything at once. So that's just something to pay attention to. I want to make sure this is on polyphonic to where every key has the potential to be different. I don't think that'll matter actually in the end actually, but it's just something to know for LFOs. It's really important. Can be really important. Okay, so I have this cool thing happening already. I may even have it a bit slower just to give it that real reversed thing happening. But now the thing that's going to make this kind of seem a little bit cooler and maybe more creative is I'm going to have the speed of this LFO change depending on where I am on the keyboard. So a lot of boards will have what they say, like a modifier or modulator called key amount. Let's see what it's called here. Here I believe it's called key follow, key track. So it's either key amount, key follow, key track, something like that. And I'm going to have that effect. So the source is key tracking. And essentially what this is doing is just assigning a value to the modulation depending on where you are on the keyboard. So like lowest key on the keyboard would be 0, highest key would be the most, right? So I'm going to have that be my source. Destination is going to be LFO1 rate. And you'll notice now, like, let me make this obscene just so you can hear the difference. Again, I always kind of aim for subtlety here, but I just want to show you what it sounds like. So you can hear, like, I'm playing 2 octaves apart Fs. And hear how much faster the F up here is going than the F down here. Seems like it's like 18, 19 times the speed. So let me turn this down and I'm gonna play a chord. So now we have that kind of thing where like you're hearing it kind of like fade up, but if I play a chord and hold it, it's happening at different times, right? And then to kind of like mess with the subtlety of it a little bit more, I can make the LFO bigger, like I can have more cutoff movement. I can even add some resonance to give it like a little... So I like that sound a lot already. And just so you kind of know, here's what it would sound like if we had a different waveform. Like, so with like a sawtooth wave, you're gonna get more frequencies to kind of play with. And if you want to like affect, you know, like how there you, like with reverse sounds, you normally get like a little bit of a pop at the end of, it's like fade, 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 pop, right? On some LFOs, there's ways to like kind of skew like what's happening at the beginning and the end of the LFO. So on this board, you can actually see it here in the waveform. I'm like moving this smooth button. I believe it's called like skew rate or something like that on like the Pro 3, but a lot of boards have this with their LFOs. Like you'll hear it's like now. You hear that kind of like boom, boom, boom. Like it's like a little bit of a pop, which I like because that's what actual reverse stuff sounds like. But if I wanted to play with that, so it's just changing the shape of the LFO so the entrance isn't as like 0 to nothing or 0 to all the way up, then back to 0 super hard, right? Okay, so we have this patch. You know, I kind of want to make this a bit more interesting, and maybe I'll add a little bit of like little pitch warbly stuff. So I'm gonna assign my second LFO to all oscillator pitch. So source LFO 2, destination all oscillator pitch. I'm gonna give myself just like 1. So that really adds to the like tape sound. And I'm gonna get crazy because we're in sound design class right now. I'm gonna add a third LFO, and I'm gonna also have it affect the pitch of all oscillators, but the shape, so that previous LFO, the shape was you kind of heard like an even warble, like up and down. The shape of this third LFO, I'm gonna have be noise. You could also get this effect with like a random LFO or a sample and hold, or SNH, sometimes it's called LFO, and just have it move really quickly. But you'll notice now, if I have source LFO 3, destination also oscillator, also all oscillator pitch, if I turn it up, I get this like noisy, this thing happening, which obviously that's not musical, but if I make it really subtle, so the cool thing about this is I can play a chord, hold the sustain pedal, and there's going to be different timings because again the key track is changing how fast this like LFO1 fade that we set up happens per key. So the bottom ones won't fade as fast, the high ones will fade way faster. So like a really cool effect. Now obviously, like, you know, I like to add like sometimes choruses and verbs and stuff like that. Maybe I'll put like a little bit of plate reverb on this. And then like if I'm interacting with it, I also like to have, like sometimes I'll just like pitch bend at random times just to kind of give myself some like real tape mess up sounding. So anyway, that is the like faded looper sound. Again, this won't work on every single board, but it's a cool sound design tip to mess around with. Again, I really love doing this. Like sawtooth waves are cool as well. You might want to like have a bit of like maybe a less of a filter movement. Like that's actually pretty sick to me. So there I just turned the amount of LFO1 down because I didn't want this super loud sawtooth thing happening. And the thing one last thing I really like doing too, and this kind of happens with like boards with differing voice amounts. Like I want to say this is 8 voice or 10 voice or something like that. But what I like to do is like I'll play a big chord, I'll let it do its thing, and then I'll start just randomly playing other notes within that scale or within whatever tonality I want to achieve, and then voices start getting subbed out. So like if this is 8 notes, which I think it is, I play these 8 notes, the next note I play whatever the first one I happened to press down all the way was will get subbed out, right? So like if I play this, which again, they're gonna loop at all different times. Now I'm gonna start adding notes. Maybe I'll even add like a different chord. So it's this really cool, like, evolving structure that you're still interacting with, but it kind of seems like it's coming from on its own, even though you just built it. So I hope you have fun with this. I love this trick. I've been using this on a lot of preset packs of mine lately just because I think it's such a beautiful sound. And feel free to interact with it. You know, again, like the initial sound we used was just either here it's just sawtooth wave or sine wave. Like if I take all the modulation off, like let me turn this LFO off, turn the cutoff back up, and then go back to sine wave. So this is the initial sound. Like that's a cool sound, but anything that's doing that, like any sort of like I'm holding something and there's a chord, any of those things can have that kind of like looping in backwards sound. So try it out on your boards. I would love to hear what you come up with. Send me videos, tag me and stuff. But yeah, hopefully you dug this. And if you have questions, throw them in the comment section. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers, y'all.